What's up, guys? It's finally time to get back to some Giallo reviews, and we're going to review The Red Queen Kills 7 Times from 1972. Let's go. The Red Queen Kills 7 Times stars Barbara Boucher, Sybil Danning, and is directed by Emilio Miraglia. What's up, guys? Hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. I'm recording this on a Sunday, which is usually my recording day, and today we're going to do a Giallo classic, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. First off, give a shout out to Dave Vanderhoff, who kind of reminded me of this movie. Now, somebody sent me the DVD, which is right here. I want to say Rick Hunter sent me this, but I'm not 100% sure. So let me know down in the comments if you sent me this. If it was you, Rick, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this movie. Going to cut to the chase. I will be talking some spoiler stuff because the twist ending is freaking bonkers in this movie. And I'll give you a warning when we get to that section of the review. But man, I don't know what it is about 1972. It's like 1981 being like the greatest year for like slasher movies. I think 72 might be the greatest year for Giallo movies, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it might be. I've seen so many great ones from that year. Also, our Hit the Bricks podcast has been doing really well, having a lot of fun. It's over on Spotify. Now you can get a t-shirt. If you want the t-shirt, all you got to do is go to the link that I'll put in the info box, and the link is also in all of my clips that are over on the second channel. And if you go to Davey Deathray's channel, I'm sure he has these links as well. But it's an awesome t-shirt. But first off, let's jump into a quick plot synopsis. This story was actually written by Emilio Miraglia, the director of the movie. We'll talk more about him because he's also interesting as far as his career goes, because there's sort of a mystery surrounding him, I guess, after this movie came out. But this revolves around this curse, this every 100 years curse that concerns two sisters. And according to the curse, it's like the bad sister, it does all these killings and kills the good sister. I don't know if it's like the ghost of the killer or whatever. But yeah, that's the curse. And by the way, these freaking Giallo plots, they can be a little weird and convoluted, and you might not understand everything that's going on unless you give these movies a couple of watches with a fine-tooth comb. I've given this movie 2 watches. So if I get something off or wrong about these plots in this movie, you will have to forgive me, I promise, but I'll do my best to try to decipher what's going on, especially in these last acts. I did take notes, and I might have already screwed it up because the 2 sisters, maybe one of them doesn't kill the other one. I can't remember, okay? And I'm not going to go back and rewatch it again, but it does revolve around 2 sisters, killings, and the 7th killing being the other sister. But the sisters in the modern day, 1972, for this movie happen to be Kitty and Evelyn. Kitty is played by Barbara Boucher. At the very beginning of the movie, the adult version of Kitty, because it starts with them as children, and you can see that they don't really get along, Evelyn being kind of the more mischievous sister, and she steals her doll, takes it to the grandfather, and then the grandfather tells them about the curse. But going forward into the modern day, the adult sisters do have this fight because Evelyn attacks Kitty, and Kitty accidentally kills Evelyn. Or does she? We will get to the twist, okay? You will want to stay for that if you've seen this movie. Or maybe if you haven't even seen this movie. So then throughout the rest of the movie, there are these mysterious murders that are happening. The main characters in this movie revolve around this modeling agency. You got this guy named Martin, who happens to be like the co-general manager. Not a very good guy. His wife happens to be in a mental ward, and he has driven her crazy. He is a cheating bastard, and he tends to try to sleep with the women that work at the modeling agency, except for Lulu, played by Sybil Danning, who actually tries to hook up with him. Keep following me. There's also this heroin addict character by the name of Peter, who is blackmailing Kitty along the way of the movie. He just kind of pops in and out, and you're wondering, like, what's he doing here? And you'll find out later in the movie. Kitty is under a lot of stress because, she killed her sister, but then these murders start happening, and she's wondering, is it Evelyn? Because the killer takes on the presence of Evelyn with this red cape. And that's the Red Queen, which is cool. They give the killer a certain image, and it kind of works in this movie. So then you're wondering throughout the movie, is it really Evelyn? Did she not die? Is she the one doing these killings? Who knows? A very young Sybil Danning plays Lulu in this movie. She does get naked. Sybil Danning is very known for getting naked in a lot of earlier movies, but I didn't know she starred in Giallo movies. And there's a really good interview with her on this DVD, the Arrow DVD, and I'm sure the Blu-ray. And she talks about not just this movie, but also her career and how she kind of snuck in the back door because she took a job at a modeling agency, and then when she would get potential prospects calling up to make interviews, she would pretty much volunteer herself by saying, yeah, there is a model available for your shoot. She just wouldn't tell them that it was her that was going to be doing the shoot. So this is one of those cool stories we always hear about. You know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, even lie, cheat, and steal to make your way to the top, you know, or somewhere along the rung. And that's how she ended up becoming this B-movie horror queen. You know, she started, you know, kind of in the mailroom, I guess they say, right? But her character, you know, she's very seductive. She, for some reason, really wants to sleep with Martin. And if you watch the interview with her, she says her character did really just like having sex. There was really no ulterior motive aside from that. There's also this detective. There's always a detective in a Giallo movie. And he's pretty bad at his job because he tends to interview the potential suspects for a matter of minutes, whereas in real life, you know, these people are sitting in an interrogation room for hours, maybe even days, until they're driven crazy. But no, he just did you kill him? No? Okay, let's move on to the next one. You know, that's his approach. He's horrible. I really liked Barbara Boucher as the main character. There's definitely this mystery around her. She's a very capable actress, even though when you watch this movie, most of the dubbing is from other actors. I don't know if Barbara Boucher actually did her part in this movie, but I do know that Sybil Danning, none of that is her voice. She talks about that in the behind the scenes. And this was a common procedure in terms of making not just Giallo movies, but, you know, European films.
You know any girls named Evelyn?
Evelyn. Kitty has a sister named Evelyn, though I was told she emigrated to America.
They would get the audio, but it wasn't the biggest deal because they knew they were going to go back in post and they were going to re-record the audio with either the actor that's on, on hand, or if that actor wasn't available, then they would go to other actors. Some actors, they only did dubbing work. You never saw their face.
Infatti ho l'impressione che sia questa l'unica cosa che gli confonde un poco le idee. Toller però non dà peso al particolare e prosegue. Lenore.
That's just the interesting thing about Italian movies. You could watch the Italian version, you could watch the English version, but the mouth and the audio will almost never line up perfectly. And you can tell that, you know, a lot of this was done in post. I think it's charming. It doesn't really get in the way of the movie for me. Sometimes I'll watch the Italian version with the English subtitles. Sometimes I'll watch the English version. This one actually has a very serviceable English version with competent acting. Now, let's talk about Emilio Miraglia for a moment. This is a very interesting director because he only did a couple of these types of films, this one and one before, where there was a character in the previous movie by the name of Evelyn. This is a very well put together movie, very well directed movie, but the mystery is this was his last movie. He was later in age, around like 60. But he really disappeared from directing, from the craft. You know, you never really saw him like pop up in interviews. He never really talked about if he was going to do any more movies or anything. He just disappeared. And so there was this big mystery about him for years as to like where he was. Yeah, I think he did some other movies outside of this one. But it's interesting that he only did a couple of these Giallo movies. And they are very well done and very memorable. This movie definitely has a cult fan base. People talk about it all the time. And it does have a phenomenal score as well that's just very recognizable. This score is so recognizable that you might have heard it or think you heard it in your mind, having not ever even seen the movie. Now, a quick word on the kills. This is not what you would call a splatter movie. This is a mystery, and the kills just happen to be a byproduct. There have to be 7 kills in this movie, and they don't go too crazy with getting creative with these kills. You know, there's a lot of stabbings, which is normal in Giallo movies. I think that the most creative they get is dragging one of the victims on the road. One of the characters, their coat gets stuck in the door with the killer, and the killer drives off, dragging them. You see blood and everything, but again, the kills are not like amazing or anything. They're not going to go on the top of your list. But luckily, the characters and the plot, the zany nature of the plot, make this movie so memorable. And there is an iconic scene where the Red Queen is running down this hallway. It's like a dream sequence, but it's probably the one scene that you're going to remember out of everything. It's just a really iconic scene. And sometimes these scenes, they kind of happen by accident. Sometimes it's a purposeful thing, but it's a beautifully shot scene. And just to get it all out there, there's one more character by the name of Elizabeth, who happens to be Martin's wife, but she is in a mental ward because Martin drove her crazy. And Martin is trying to get her to sign over the rights to the modeling agency. This is sort of a subplot of the movie, which is very common for Giallo movies. Oftentimes they will overstuff the plot with stuff that you don't really need. But again, I think it's just part of the charm. Now let's dive into that crazy freaking last act. And I will admit, the first time I watched this, when I got to the reveal, I thought, oh, that's the killer, and then there's nothing else. And no, there's plenty more after the reveal. So there's this character by the name of Rosemary in the movie who happens to be a secretary. And in these types of films, you can call them Scooby-Doo plots, and I would say Scream even owes a debt to movies like this. But it's hard to really call who the killer is because they don't really build up. They do a good job of setting up red herrings, so it could really be anybody. I think a lot of the interrogation and the questioning sort of gives that away in terms of red herrings, but you're never 100% sure. I think they do a good job of that. And I think American filmmakers could learn something as far as like setting up twist endings, twist reveals, because I think they do a good job in movies like this. Most of the time, seems like these days, I call the killer inside of freaking, 20 minutes, like in Hard Eyes. But here's the spoiler section, so just so you know, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, if you don't want to know any more, get out of here. You can probably find this movie on, Shudder or Tubi, I would imagine. But initially, Kitty comes down into this like dungeon where she has actually buried or put her in the wall, Evelyn. And she opens the door, and then the killer has a knife in their back, and it happens to be Rosemary. So you're thinking, okay, that's it. It's just Rosemary's doing this. Who knows what the reasoning is. But then this is one of those very layered plots, layered twist endings, where you find out that it's actually the third sister, Francesca, who wants the inheritance of the grandfather. And there's actually 4 children. Because Rosemary happened to be an actual daughter that Kitty never knew about because she was swapped out at birth with Evelyn. And the reason they did that is so they could try to trick the curse, kind of like the Bruce Lee thing. So there were 4 children that were going to get an inheritance. And of course, Francesca wanted it all for herself, so it was all about greed. And so she kills Rosemary, because Rosemary started going a little crazy. And there's this whole big sequence in the dungeon with these rats that come out. And whoever did that voice acting for the screaming for Kitty did a damn good job, because there's quite a few scenes in this movie where Kitty screams. And I'm like, damn, that's how you do a scream. Kind of reminded me of Brian De Palma's Blowout at the beginning. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, the scream. So this is a very competent and memorable Giallo film, outside of all other Giallo films. So I'll give it a low purchase worthy for sure. I had a really good time with The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. And that title definitely fits in with, Giallo movies. And I'm curious to see if you guys have seen it. It was a really fun watch. And it's brisk. It goes by quick. There's a lot going on in this movie, and I think you'll have a good time with it. If you want just like a mystery type of Giallo movie, this is perfect. And it's a beautifully shot film, too. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. Follow my Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon, become a channel member. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.